Eagle Nation, the first domino has fallen of the offseason. Probably the biggest one, as well, as it is officially official. Here on a Wednesday afternoon, the Philadelphia Eagles have hired their new offensive coordinator. What does it mean going forward into the future, and why did they do this? We'll break it all down, but welcome into A to Z Philly. I'm RB. Do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel. We'll have you covered up to date with everything this offseason. But let's get into it, man. Straight into it. Kevin Patullo, as expected, is now going to be the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. Sources tell the insiders. This comes from Mike Garofalo on Twitter. An integral part of the transition between OCs the past few years, and a trusted part of Nick Sirianni's coaching staff, Patullo takes the reins as play caller in Philly. Now, we talked about this on our last video last week. Why did the Eagles go with Kevin Patullo? He's the guy. He's been here, right? He was an integral part of winning a Super Bowl. Keep in mind, it's also, February 19th. We're about to go into the last week of February, and while the Eagles were winning games and hoisting that trophy, other teams were out there hiring their coaches, their coordinators. So it's not like the Eagles have had a ton of options to choose from, but they stick with the guy who also has been Nick Sirianni's right-hand man since he arrived in Philly, in Indy. So they have experience together. Now, this was coming out just a few hours ago before this was official from Adam Schefter. He said, it's being reported that Kevin Patullo is the current favorite to land the OC job. Quote, it's the right place at the right time. Their playoff run lasted late. Coaches got jobs, and they're late into the hiring cycle. The combine is next week. So, although it may not be the most favorable way or the most optimal way to go about it, the Eagles said, hey, we have a guy here. He's contributed to the staff. He's been a part of this, and he's Nick Sirianni's guy. Now, that also brings up a very interesting question, which we will get to in a couple minutes. But another thing that you have to think about is Kellen Moore left to go to New Orleans, right? He jumped ship, and congratulations, happy for him. Wish he would have ran it back. Think it would have been a pretty good idea. He probably could have landed in a better situation next year, but nonetheless, he had to jump on it for his family. Shout out to Kellen Moore. But he's also taking people away. He's prying guys from this staff. We talked about Doug Nussmeier last week. Doug Nussmeier, Eagles quarterback coach, who did a tremendous job with Jalen Hurts this year, is probably going to be the OC in New Orleans, but he might even take other pieces as well. This came out from Adam Schefter yesterday. Eagles assistant head coach and running back coach Jamal Singleton interviewed for the Saints offensive coordinator job per source. One Eagles official recently described Singleton as a big part of what we do on offense and a rising star going forward. I mean, Saquon had some huge praise for him. A lot of things said in the building, very, very good about this guy potentially maybe being a coordinator one day or a coach. And now Kellen Moore is trying to take him away as well. Now, this could be a Rooney Rule thing. Who knows, right? But what if Jamal Singleton goes to New Orleans thinking he may have more opportunity there? Look, I'm just throwing it out there. There are guys that are in the mix for other jobs as well. And, sometimes guys take opportunities. So the Eagles had a guy right in front of them. They decided to take it. That's why they did it. But it proposes some really big questions. And the number one thing is, was Jalen Hurts involved in this decision? Well, Jalen Hurts is now going to have his fifth different offensive coordinator in 6 years and his sixth different play caller. That is not ideal. That is not what you want. But unfortunately, when you go to the Super Bowl twice, guys get hired away. It's how it goes. It says going back to college, Hurts now has 13 different play callers in the last 10 years. You want to build consistency, continuity. Maybe this is a way that they kind of do that, given that Kevin Patullo is here. But I also warn against just going with the buddy hire. This is what I said before. I probably would have preferred a guy outside the building who has experience calling plays, who has experience being a coordinator. I'm not saying Kevin Patullo can't do a solid job, but last time you chose that buddy hire in Brian Johnson, who had ties to Jalen Hurts' father and knew Jalen Hurts going way back to middle school and things like that, you saw how it worked out. I think where the Eagles are at, when I think about this team as a whole, Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman still view Nick Sirianni as sort of the puppet coach. Obviously, they have respect for him. Obviously, he's going to be in on these decisions. But you think about last year, right? Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio were definitely Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman hires. The same way back in 2020 where Doug Peterson won the whole thing. He wanted more power. He wanted more say, more respect. And they said, nope, Jeff Lurie got burned when he gave all of that over to Chip Kelly. He's not doing it ever again. That's why they go for these coaches that are last at the interview line, last on the totem pole, because they want guys who they can mold themselves. And now they've had two different coaches who have been at the bottom, who nobody wanted, things like that have risen all the way up to win Super Bowls. And now it's like, hey, did Nick Sirianni have say in this? Did he go and advocate for Patullo saying, this is my guy? Or did it work out in just a matter of timing and they didn't have any other option? So that's something to keep in mind. I think Jalen Hurts has to have a say in who he wants, and maybe he's been very comfortable with Kevin Patullo, but he was comfortable with Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier, and now those guys are probably not going to be here. So definitely something to keep in mind. And here's what Jalen Hurts said a couple days ago about Kevin Patullo, and he was asked whether he would like Patullo being the new offensive coordinator. He says, quote, he's never been, he's had a different role, so it is hard to compare. His job would demand something totally different for him. I have a lot of confidence in him and what he has shown, but over the years I've learned that's out of my jurisdiction. So maybe Jalen Hurts did not have any say in this. I mean, I feel like you should go to your franchise quarterback who just won it all. I feel like you should include the coach, but Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman will not get burned again. They don't want to hand over. They don't want to relinquish all of the power to the head coach. So this was a call from the top down, but I'm sure Nick Sirianni advocated for his friend. I don't view Nick Sirianni as going down the same path as Doug Peterson saying, hey, I want my power, and if you don't give it to me, then I'm going to leave. I'm going to do my own thing. But again, Doug Peterson got burned as well, right? Press Taylor, all those guys that were Doug's guys. It did not work out, just like it did not work out when Nick Sirianni tried to take over and, give more of his input, right? Bring in Brian Johnson. So what I am hoping for the Eagles now moving forward is that this is not Nick Sirianni's going to, be head honcho. He's going to call plays. He's going to run everything. We saw last year that Nick Sirianni's best role, the way that his job is best fulfilled, is as that quote unquote CEO coach, where he is just overseeing everything, managing everything, and delegating and not giving too much input everywhere. I do not want Nick Sirianni to call plays. I want it to be Kevin Patullo, but I am a little bit nervous given that he has never had experience calling plays. But the good thing is that he sat in the shadows of Kellen Moore. He saw exactly what he did, and although he may have not had any imprint on designing schemes and, coming up with plays and things like that, he saw it firsthand. We saw the same thing with Brian Johnson, who did not learn a thing under Shane Steichen, or maybe Nick Sirianni had a little bit too much control. But nonetheless, the Eagles have already been through the torture possibility. They did this just 2 years ago. So now they should know exactly what to do. They should have the blueprint laid out, and they should be able to succeed. Overall, that's my take on it. A little bit more about this hire as we pull over to an article here on NFL.com. Kevin Patullo joined Philly in 2021 as the passing game coordinator, and he added associate head coach in 2023. But now we have another move as well. Miami Dolphins offensive assistant Parks Frazier is going to be hired as Kevin Patullo's replacement. And we look up Parks Frazier, of course, another guy that has ties as well. So did Nick Sirianni have an imprint on that? Definitely a fair question, but Parks Frazier was the offensive quality control coach for the Colts in 2020. Before that, he was an assistant to the head coach for a couple years. Then he was an assistant quarterbacks coach, then an interim offensive coordinator when they had a firing. And then he was a passing game coordinator with the Panthers. Last year, an assistant on offense with the Dolphins. And now he is the Eagles passing game coordinator. So he has served a variety of roles, but obviously has the ties to Nick Sirianni, to Kevin Patullo, back in Indianapolis. So maybe Nick is, just strengthening some of his ties and bringing in some of his guys. But overall, I just don't see a way that it gets past Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman. They get the final say, and that is how it's going to be moving forward. Kevin Patullo is 43 years old, and it says his work with Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni predates the move to Philly. The two were together for 3 years in Indianapolis. Sirianni was the OC under Frank Reich, and Patullo started as the wide receivers coach in Indy in 2018 and then moved to a passing game specialist role. So Patullo's been here. He understands what it takes to get it done, and hopefully no other coaches leave the staff and they, fire it up and get ready to go and try to win another one. So we will probably hear a lot more as we move into the next couple of weeks about this hire and, who's going to call plays. I mean, that was the main quote. That was the thing that was blown up last year. As soon as they hired Kellen Moore, they asked Nick, who is going to call plays? He said, we will be delegating that to Kellen. That'll be his strong suit. I'm going to sit back, kind of oversee everything. So we'll see how it works out. At least the Eagles don't have to search for a DC because we know Big Vic is staying here in Philly. Those are my thoughts. Give me your reactions down in the comments. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.